Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
What's up, guys? It's Darren. Welcome to the Touch MBA podcast. What we do here is talk to students and alumni and professors and admissions directors of the world's top business schools to give you an inside look of what's going on at these top programs and how you can get in them. This week, we're continuing with another guest-hosted episode of the Touch MBA podcast. This time, I brought on Sabaina Kamara, who's actually been on our show before, episode number 109, where we discussed crafting your best story. Sabaina, at the time, was an applicant who had just gotten into Michigan Ross. She was an avid listener of the podcast, joined our Admissions Edge program. So we kind of did a breakdown on what she did to apply to Michigan Ross. And now she just finished her first year. Man, time flies. I really thought Sabaina could provide a new energy and perspective to the show. And I believe in this episode she really has, not only through her perspective, but also through the types of guests she's able to access. So in this case, Sabaina brought on her good friend and president of the Ross MBA Council, Kashay Sanders, and they break down their first year, look back at it, talk about things like imposter syndrome when jumping into new internships and new industries. So I think, this episode will give you a lot of content that you haven't heard before. But first, just a reminder that you can get free school selection and profile help at touchmba.com. So I proudly present to you now our second guest host of the show, Sabaina Kamara.
Hi, my name is Sabaina Kamara, and I'm a first-year MBA at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. Before Ross, I worked in HR compliance for diversity and inclusion, helping companies become more diverse. During my business school application process, I was an avid subscriber of the Touch MBA Admissions podcast, and the resources provided by Darren truly helped me develop my strategy for success in the process. I've decided to guest host the podcast primarily because I want to share my experiences and those of my peers to provide additional insight into business school for those who are considering this path. On this episode, I'll be interviewing my classmate and good friend, Kashay Sanders, who is also a first-year MBA at Ross. Hi, Kashay.
Hey, Sabaina.
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. I am honored that you asked me to do this. This is really cool.
Awesome. So, guys, Kashay is like a phenomenal human being, and as she launches in to tell you about herself, I just want to put in the plug that she's the new president for the MBA Council at Ross. So you are you're listening to the president of the student body.
Okay. It's a lot of pressure. So again, my name is Kashay Sanders, and a little bit about me is that I'm originally from the Bronx, New York, which I'm very proud of. New York it has my heart. And a lot of my professional background is actually in social impact. And so my undergraduate was at Dartmouth College. I focused on gender studies there. And then I did a bunch of exploration. So I lived in India for 2 years, working in social enterprise. I worked in government, focused on workforce development. And then I was at a nonprofit focused on homelessness. And then business school wasn't originally in the plan. I thought I was going to get maybe an MPP or a law degree because those are the things you do when you care about social impact, or that's what I thought. But then I started observing the organizations I worked in and realized that they were doing wonderful work. But one thing that was stunting our progress was that leadership really wasn't taking care of employees. I saw burnout. I saw high turnover. I saw redundancy. And so I thought there has to be a better way to work. And when I looked at what kinds of places offered that type of education, it was business school. And then when I looked at who was really devoting resources to the idea of how do you create positive organizational cultures, it was Ross. And that's how I ended up here.
Awesome. So let's kind of talk about, one, your internship that you'll be taking on this summer. why you decided to go into that internship, and then also like any activities that you're currently involved in at Ross. And then we'll just kind of launch into that like reflection period of like the MBA 1 experience for you.
I love reflection. Everyone who knows me knows this. So in terms of my internship, I was very fortunate to land an internship with Microsoft this summer in their HR program. It's called MTreks. And I came in with that as my dream. So I knew that I wanted to do an HR internship in tech when I came into Ross, because tech is in an interesting place right now where the industry is changing rapidly. They have to be very responsive. And amongst the top companies, there's a lot of competition for talent. And so those companies right now are very invested in how do we create experiences that people want to be a part of so they stick with us for the long haul. And so what tech is doing right now in HR is so creative. And that's why I came in wanting to do that. So I'm pumped to be at Microsoft this summer, especially given their incredible leader, Satya Nadella, who has instituted quite a lot of changes at the organization. And so in terms of involvement at Ross to help me manifest some of those passions, one of the key areas of my focus this year was Human Capital Club, which I loved. I got to spearhead our first Human Capital Week, which was an opportunity to invite the broader Ross community into why we care so much about human capital and the way it just can be a support to all other functions within the business. So we did things like intro to people analytics, or we had a wall of quotes from human capital leaders and all of these things. So that was a huge, proud moment for me this year.
Awesome. Okay, so now thinking about like that MBA 1 year experience. So we're both MBA 1s. We've had different experiences just based on kind of like what we were recruiting on, what we were involved in. But just kind of looking back, like what are the things that you think went well? And then what are the things that didn't go as well? Or what are the things that you think you would have liked to change?
What I think went well was I had a desire to be proactive about things I wanted to do and how to pull resources around the things I was passionate about. So Human Capital Week is one example of that. Another one is I was sitting in a meeting with a friend and we were thinking to each other, Ross doesn't seem to have any service trips. Yeah. How can we create that space? And so we said, okay, let's just do it. And then the next thing we knew, we were planning a service trip experience to Houston and got supported by the Center for Social Impact. And so I would say taking those leaps and just saying like, all right, let's try it. I've never done this before, but like the resources are here. The support is here. Let's just do it.
Yeah. And that service trip, was it the hurricane relief?
So yeah, it was Hurricane Harvey relief. Thanks for clarifying. So basically what we did was we connected with this nonprofit organization called All Hands and Hearts. That is terrific. So they are going in after a natural disaster has occurred and focusing on the rebuild. And they did the same with Hurricane Harvey after it hit Houston. So we stayed on a volunteer base for a week and some of us helped to finish homes. I spent most of my time working on a school. But it was a powerful experience I got to share with other Rossers.
Nice. And then, okay, so thinking about like now pivoting into like, what would you have changed like as far as your experience? So as we know, like coming into like the MBA experience, you're told that that there's like 3 certain pillars, right? Recruiting, social, and academics. So what we've heard is like a lot about the extracurricular, a lot about the recruiting. But is there anything that you think that like just kind of basing it off of those 3 pillars that you would have liked to change? Like I know we had like an earlier conversation about like travel for leisure or anything like that. Like what would you have changed about your experience or and then thinking how you plan to come into like the second year and really hone in on those goals.
Yeah, I love that. The first thing I think of honestly is you can only know something like this in retrospect, but I wish I would have been more patient with myself coming in. So you get to Ross with so much energy to make as big an impact as you can. Yeah. And you get here and you realize that there's a learning curve. You have to get settled in. There's so much going on. It's hard to be immediately in a place where you can contribute. But I remember in the beginning just being so mad at myself for not moving fast enough, not doing enough. And the reality is I needed to set up a foundation first. So even just remembering that as I go into my internship, there will be a period where I won't know much and I need to ask questions and I have to be comfortable with being in that stage. Yeah. So that is one thing. And the other thing I was mentioning to Sabaina earlier that I've gotten to do some interesting travel that's more structured. So like MAP or MTrek. But now I'm thinking, it could be fun just to get to know my classmates in a more informal way. Yeah. Not everything has to have like the structure around it. So I just want to let myself do more of that next year as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned MAP. Okay. So that's like a really cool segue into like this next portion. So MAP is Ross's Multidisciplinary Action Project, which essentially is required by all first-year MBAs during the final quarter. So it's a 7-week consulting project in which we help, top companies from all over the world solve a problem. So, for example, my MAP project was with the Kellogg company, of course, the cereal company. And I didn't get a lot of travel. I was based here in Ann Arbor with travel, quote unquote, to Battle Creek, Michigan, which is about an hour and a half away. Not the best, but the project was phenomenal. I had a great sponsor. We dove into like this really blank space problem about, how, future changes in mobility, which is specifically autonomous vehicles, connected cars, and ride sharing. How will that impact the way people eat? So it was a huge blank space, and we had to kind of fill in the gaps for Kellogg's and develop strategic opportunities that they can kind of see, they can use over the next 10 to 15 years. So that was my project. So for you, Kashay, I know you had a really great project with phenomenal experiences and you got to travel outside of the US. So if you want to just kind of talk a little bit about that project and any learnings or any growth that you saw or that you experienced as a result of MAP.
Right. Oh, man. And it's cool to hear more about your project, too. Yeah. We have to talk about that more at some point. But I was at a company that was based out of Shanghai. And what they were seeking to do, why they had a MAP team, was they had merged with another company to help them expand their scope of products. But they hadn't really taken steps to intertwine themselves as a company, leverage each other's strengths, truly integrate. So they reached out to us to say, how can we better do this? And how are our competitors doing it? And so when we got there, we got to interview senior leaders across the company who were so forthcoming with us about the issues they were facing internally. We totally didn't expect that. And then as we dug deeper into the project, I had this delightful discovery that it was really at its core about HR and management and organizations. The questions they were asking were, how do we design this for efficiency and productivity? How can we improve communications across offices in the same city or across the world? These are the questions that strategic HR professionals are thinking about right now. The other cool part was, as we were working, a lot of the times I would say things like, oh, this reminds me of that case that we did in strategy, or, oh, wait, this is management accounting. Yeah. So actually getting to see why these cases that feel a little bit, not applicable in the moment, to see how they matter to a business in real life, like that was a powerful moment for me. And so in that way, MAP truly is a laboratory, but the way in which it's not a laboratory is that it does have the potential to have real impact on these companies. And so that was a cool experience for me, just getting to, on my own, do some of the things I'd read so much about. Like, how do you create a post-merger integration plan? Yeah. I had no idea, but then I figured it out, and that was an empowering process.
Yeah, and just kind of thinking about just the dynamics of that project as far as, what the problem was and how you guys solved it. How do you kind of see that translating into, your position at Microsoft in HR? Like, do you see that direct, relationship, or how do you feel that you can use that experience to inform your 10-week, internship this summer in Seattle?
I think that's a good point. I would say one is that it gave me confidence that I can go into something knowing nothing and then come out feeling like I have enough of a command around a topic to give thoughtful, like intellectually grounded recommendations.
Yeah.
So I think, for me, I've had a lot of roles that have been in kind of HR adjacent, but I've never formally worked in HR. So this would be my first time really doing that.
Yeah.
So knowing I can step in and say like, you know what, I don't know much about this, but I trust that I can dig into the resources needed to be able to produce something useful.
Yeah.
The confidence boost to me is where it comes in the most handy.
Absolutely. And that's, just reflecting on my experience as well during MAP. So although it's like our projects are vastly different, we're working on like different problems, trying to solve those. But I'm going into consulting. So I'll be at Deloitte Strategy and Operations this summer in New York. Very excited. Mm-hmm. But I didn't come from a very strong quantitative background or like whatever. Like I didn't have like the big name company behind me, coming into business school. So of course you kind of have, well, for me, like you kind of have like this imposter syndrome where you feel like, oh my gosh, like, will I really be able to do this? Is this, going to be a great summer? Like, how can I contribute? And just thinking about my experience at MAP, during MAP, I realized that I have so much to offer.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's like, you realize that, through working with your team, like I had a 6-person team, others have 4-person teams, but in working with your teams, you're growing this skill set and really being able to apply like the things that you've learned in school. Like for me specifically, I was applying like things that I learned during the case interview process for recruiting with consulting. So like I was able to learn, like to use the way that I learned to break down a problem to help my team break down the problem and move forward.
That's
like,
awesome.
And to develop hypotheses, test those hypotheses and then move forward. So it was really cool to see that growth from learning in the classroom and even through recruiting and extracurriculars and being able to apply it to a project, solve that problem, and then know like, wow, like I'll be a great consultant this summer, like I'll be successful. So like you're saying, like it's just so awesome just to have that out of classroom experience. And MAP is a phenomenal value proposition for Ross, I believe.
MAP is an incredible experience. And I think it's challenging in a way that is ultimately productive.
Absolutely.
Which I appreciate.
Absolutely. Whew, okay. All right. So outside of MAP, let's talk about this summer because now we've gotten out of MAP, like literally like last week.
Yep. That's so good.
We had a final presentation to our sponsors. We had to write like a 30-page written report, maximum 30 pages, not 30 pages, right? But maximum 30 pages of a written report with our findings. And now we're done. We're done. So we're like a little ahead of the game as far as like other business schools because we end like April 25th and we have like about a month or so before our internship starts, like normal time for internships start to go. So we have a lot kind of in between. So for me, I'll be going to Japan on our J-Truck, which is a student-led trip that happens at the end of the year. And a lot of MBA 1s and MBA 2s as well go. It's about like 70 to 80 of us that'll be in Japan for about a week and a half. So Kashay,
it's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be awesome. So Kashay, what will you be doing before internship starts?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this because I love this program.
Yeah.
So in the month of May, I have the just distinct opportunity to participate in a really unique feature of the Ross experience called Ross Open Road. And Open Road is a program that engages teams of MBAs, so typically about 4 people per team, about 3 teams, to take a road trip across the country where they work with entrepreneurs who are serving their communities on a business challenge that they have for 1 week. So it's 4 or 5 weeks long. It's a new entrepreneur each week. And typically it's just inspiring to see these local businesses in action. So for instance, one of the places that my team is going to is a sweet potato pie shop, Jawanda's Sweet Potato Pies. And she said that she sees herself as, of course, a pie shop and a baked goods shop, but also wants to be a support for her community. So for instance, in her restaurant, they have a prayer jar where people can put in notes of things they want, their team to pray over. And that's how she serves her community.
That's awesome.
And so that is just going to be a wonderful experience that will allow us too to think about, again, how can we take these concepts that feel really high level in the classroom and use it to work with people, solve the day-to-day challenges of their business.
Yeah. And how long is Open Road again?
So it can either be 4 weeks or 5 weeks.
4 or 5 weeks. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. We have some great entrepreneurs lined up. I love my team. We put a lot of work into developing a healthy team dynamic before we hit the road, since we'll be in a car for 4 weeks together. So that's important.
Healthy team dynamic.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Ooh.
Like how did you learn about that one? And how did you guys prepare yourself to make sure that you have that team dynamic prior to starting Open Road? Oh,
that's a great question. So to me, healthy team dynamic, a lot of my understanding of that is frankly influenced by the Center for Positive Organizations. So I am a Plus Lab Fellow at Ross, which is basically the center's effort to engage students in examples of organizations that are implementing positive practices. And one thing they teach us about is a concept called high quality connections. And in simple terms, it just means, how do you focus on building relationships with your team such that the work is not merely transactional? And then when you focus on implementing those connections, it helps the group weather difficult moments down the road, which they will inevitably hit. And so we did that in a number of ways. Some of it was just by hanging out, like going to dinner and going to see a movie. Other times we asked intentional questions. So, what's something that matters the most to you, and how did you arrive at that? And so it allowed us to build what we often call in the group some relational capital with each other. So in those moments where there is tension, we have this capital to fall back on. Yeah. We have that trust to fall back on. Yeah. And that's what we've done to prepare for this journey.
Yeah. And that sounds very similar to the team charter that we had to develop for MAP, which was essentially, what are the things that what are our goals for MAP, or how do we operate within the team, and what are our rules for, ensuring that we have positive relationship dynamics within the team. So it seems like that's the informal version of our formal team charter, which is really important, because I guess a lot of people don't recognize just how important it is to set that foundation as a team. Because, you guys are going to be working at such a high level. There's going to be a lot of stress, a lot of differences, and, being able to fall back on that positive relationship dynamic that you guys established in the beginning would definitely be really beneficial.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's so crucial. And I feel like our team has acknowledged that and put in the work to ensure that we have that foundation. And so it makes me just optimistic about what we can accomplish on the road.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
thank
awesome.
you.
Okay, so that was Open Road. We heard a lot about Kashay's internship this summer. Is there anything that, you're excited about or that's just different from the norm? Maybe are you excited about just being in Seattle and or are you excited about developing new relationships outside of just the company? What are you excited about your summer internship this year?
Oh, so many things are buzzing through my head because it's very layered. But what I can say is, and I was just talking to another colleague about this, is at Ross, oftentimes you meet people who are brilliant, but you don't always get that one-on-one time with them to really sit down and say, what is your story? Yeah. Can we hang out more? Yeah. And so I'm excited just to see all of the Rossers who are going to Seattle, especially people who have been like, oh, I know you're wonderful. We just have not had a chance to sit down. And so I think it'll allow me to just expand, honestly, how I see the core of my Ross community by getting to spend time with people outside of the Ross context and just get more insight on who they are as people.
Absolutely.
So that is one of the things I'm really excited about. And I plan to make intentional space for people to come together and connect in that way.
That's wonderful. And just thinking just about how things have kind of played out as far as location and geography goes, like knowing that there's going to be a heap of rosters that'll be in Seattle, Chicago, New York, like all over the nation. It's really wonderful to know that like we still have that community.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it be big or small, we still have that support base.
I totally agree.
And opportunity to get to know people that you weren't able to get to know during the school year, because just as background, like for a lot of business schools, well, all business schools essentially have either sections, clusters, or streams, whatever it is that they call it for their business school, which is in the beginning of the school year for the first semester, or just essentially the first year, you're going to your classes with the same people. Like that's how it is at Ross. Like for the first semester, we went to classes with our sections. We have 5 sections, but that makes it difficult to make cross-sectional relationships. So like having the opportunity to be in your internship in a different state and meeting other rosters outside of your section and just getting to know them on like a deeper level, because at this point, you know, you guys have gone through the first year together, but separately kind of.
Yeah.
And you're both going into like this new land, basically, like on this new journey, like this new stress or you know, opportunity, and there will be fears. So having that support network is key.
I was going to say too, like it makes the prospect, I'm from New York, I've only lived on the East Coast, and it makes the prospect of potentially picking up my life and moving across the country just a lot more reasonable.
Absolutely.
Because I know I'll have this core community that I trust and that I have a lot in common with.
Absolutely.
Also, I would be remiss if I didn't use this opportunity to quickly plug my MTrek for the incoming MBAs who are listening. So it's called Alexa, Take Us to the Amazon. It's going to be in Brazil. There will be pink dolphins. There will be boats. It's going to be great. So just check us out.
And FYI, okay, our MTreks are student-led travel opportunities that are organized by rising second-year MBAs. By that time, will be MBA 2s. And it gives an opportunity for the incoming class to get to know people initially. So before they hit campus. So I'm also leading an MTrek to the Baltics. So we're going to be visiting Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. So it'll be a great trip. But there's trips all over the world. There's one going to Tanzania, a few going to South Africa, Brazil, Chile. Like you have so many great opportunities to meet your classmates and also have a little bit of fun before you hit the ground running at Ross. Yeah.
They're all great. Brazil will be extra great. So.
With the pink dolphins, which I didn't know existed. Wow. Okay. I am learning here. Okay. So we have talked through like this entire MBA experience and like in a compressed time period. Like there's so much more to learn or to talk about, which is something that we always do. I love our reflection moments.
Oh, yeah.
So let's kind of think a little bit about Ross. Like, what is your vision for Ross as president of the MBA Council? So this is a phenomenal opportunity, and Kashay was elected by our class, and also the 2018s, like the student body here at Ross. And we are so proud of Kashay. And it's just so wonderful to know that Kashay will be leading, you know, the school next year. So I wanted to kind of end here, like where she can talk about what her vision is for Ross, for the student body, and how she's going to basically do all these great things.
Oh, thank you for saying
not
that.
a lot of, no pressure.
I hope so. Okay, so I do want to add some nuance to that and just note that a lot of my role, honestly, is clearing barriers for the vice presidents. So there are 7 people on the MBA Council, and they each have a specific area of focus meant to advocate for students in different ways. So we have the VP of Academics and Ethics. We have the Vice President of Professional Development, of International Students. That was a newly instituted position, of Finance, of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and of Student Engagement. And that deals with, you know, clubs and club approvals. And so the work of the council is really all 7 of us staying in constant communication and supporting each other with these huge realms of student life. But I think for me, one of the main things I'm motivated by in this role is ensuring students who want to be, change agents within Ross or want to impact campus and campus life have an outlet to do that, and see MBA Council as a platform for reaching the administrators or the resources they need in order to be able to do that. And so what we elevate a lot when we sort of talk about that vision is the work of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. What they've done is that they've created a broader committee that engages about 20 or so students. And so it's not just the VP working alone. She has this council that can drive all of these different aspects of what it means to create an inclusive Ross community. And so I want to think about more models for how we tap into the energy of students who want to make Ross a better place. So that's my high level vision right now.
That's awesome. And I get really excited about that, primarily because I'm kind of like one of those offshoots of the DEI committee. I serve as the inclusion chair for my section, and each of the 5 sections has an inclusion chair, and we roll up to the DEI committee and to the VP of DEI. So this is a really great development, and it's just not within, D&I, it's just, within the entire school as far as how we engage and as a community.
Right.
That's
right.
awesome.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Well, we're at the end of our episode. So Kashay, do you have any final words as far as, let's say, advice for people who are interested in applying to business school?
Right.
And for those who are specifically interested in applying to the Ross School of Business,
Yeah.
do you have any parting words for those folks?
Yeah. So one thing I tell prospectives when I know they're sort of shopping for business schools is look and see what school has what you need. So I think it's easy to get caught up in a lot of different aspects of what it could mean to have a business school degree. But what I've observed is that success in this environment means that it has the resources and the support structures around the thing that you're passionate about. And so as you go down your list or narrow down your list, do that inward reflection of what do I need to feel happy and fulfilled in my academic experience, and then begin to prioritize based on that. That's what I did in my search, and I am so grateful all the time that I'm here, and that there's been just so much love and support for the things that I want to move forward at school, but also in my career.
Awesome. Well, we'll end there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kashay.
Thank you, Sabaina. This was awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.